Hey, I'm Tommy Chong. Welcome to High on Homegrown.
Yes, everybody, and welcome to High on Homegrown, the cannabis podcast from Percy'sGrowroom.com. This week's Grow Guides, we're talking about how to make your own cannabis seeds. This can be regular seeds, feminized seeds, or auto seeds as well. So we explain everything you really need to know in this episode. We don't go into too much detail about genetics and all of that kind of stuff. We just keep it basic, keep it simple. So if you're new to this, it's really easy to follow and you can understand how to make your own cannabis seeds. Cannabis seeds can be expensive. They can cost a lot of money. So if you make your own, if you want to make your own, you'll have thousands of your own seeds, your own genetics that you can grow for many, many years and save a fortune. Or if you wanted to, you could even get into breeding and start making your own genetics and start selling them off to people. And it's something else you can do as well. All the information is in this episode. If you want to know more, then of course, like every other grow guides we have, you can head over to Percy'sGrowroom.com, sign up to the forum, start a thread, and ask any question you like, and we'll be able to help you out over there. But for now, here is the episode all about how to make cannabis seeds. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll speak to you at the end of this. See you in a bit. So last week we spoke about mother plants and cuttings. So you could keep a mother plant of one of your favorite strains, and then you could take cuttings from it, make clones, and grow more plants that were exactly the same as that. And it's a good way to preserve genetics, but you always have to have a live plant when you're doing cuttings. Now, if you wanted to preserve genetics in another way, then you could do it the old school way and just make seeds. But there's a few different ways to make seeds, and depending on the process you use, there'll be different seeds you get. You feminized seeds, autoflowering seeds, regular seeds, hermaphrodite seeds. These are different results of making seeds. So you have to use the right process to get the seeds you want. And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode today: how to make seeds, how to make certain types of seeds, and why you should also make seeds. Just a little bit of information about cannabis breeding. Only basic stuff. We won't go into too much of the really scientific stuff. We'll keep it simple, and you'll be able to make your own seeds by the end of this episode. So, where do we even begin with this? Marge, you want to say something? I'm not like
sure. I've never actually made seeds on purpose.
Yeah,
myself. I did last summer accidentally make some seeds because I had some plants out at my dad's house, and he called me up one day to say there's a lot of bees around one of your plants.
Oh no.
Yeah, and it had pollinated, so yeah, that's how I ended up with seeds. And if you're going to do it, you do end up with a ton of them. I'm assuming when it happens like that by Mother Nature that they're just regular seeds, not feminized or anything like that. I could be wrong, but yeah, aside from that, I've never actually tried to make seeds on purpose.
I see. And I think for the majority of people who have made seeds, it is probably done accidentally.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, I'm the same. I've made seeds a few times, but they've never been on purpose. I'd love to do it on purpose, but having the space to do it's a pain in the ass, man. I've only ever made hermy seeds, unfortunately. Monkey, well, let's go to Bubble Heart first because we don't know about you. Have you made seeds on purpose before?
Both on purpose and unintentionally.
Look,
I haven't. It was a few years back when I gave it a shot, and I am planning on doing it again. I just haven't had the time or the space, because the last time I did it, it was an outdoor run, and it started off as not a thing, and I wasn't even planning on it. And I just chucked a few regs in the dirt, and 90% had come up female, and I just had one male there, and I went, oh, maybe I could just let it go. And so I did. I just sort of let it go and dusted over the top, and they were unstable, and so I wasn't I wasn't really diving into it as hard as I probably should have. It was just sort of maybe I can give it a go and see what happens.
A pollen chuck.
It was a pollen chuck.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But yeah, look, it worked. It wasn't, as I said, they weren't the best of seeds, but yeah, they weren't too bad. But this next time, I'm going to try and do it properly and do a proper pheno hunt and have a play around and see what I can and can't do. And I do need to make some more autos out of a couple of strains I want to keep. So I'm going to have to do some reversing with those.
Sweet. What about you, Monkey? You've made seeds before, right? On
I've
purpose.
done it a couple times on purpose, but I'm a small scale when I do seeds. I'm never doing it to try and pass the genetics on anybody. It's maybe to keep some genetics I've got now and that kind of thing like that, or experiment. I wonder what this would happen. So I'm usually self-pollinating 1 or 2 lower buds. I'm only looking for, 25, 50, 100 seeds at the most. Yeah. But I have done it on purpose. It's successful and very easy most of the time.
It's just nature doing its thing, isn't it? If you want to make regular seeds, which is seeds that are 50% of being female and 50% of being male, so they're the regular seeds, everybody. That's what people will find out in nature when you've just had normal plants get pollinated in the natural way. But the seeds coming from them, you're not sure which ones are going to be female and which ones are going to be male until you've grown them for a while. There's no way of telling. But some people will say, you can tell by doing this, you can tell the seed, but it's all bullshit. It's just bro science. You really need to grow it out to tell whether a plant is going to be male or female. But it's pretty easy to do, man. It's just nature doing its thing. And then a few episodes ago, we spoke about Hermes. This is when the plant makes seeds of itself by producing male flowers and pollinating itself. And they're a little bit different from regulars because they'll probably be feminized if they're from a feminized plant. And, it carries on the genetics of the parents pretty much. It's genetics. And it might turn out to be hermaphrodite, might be male, might be female. You can't be sure of things. So you want to get the best seeds possible. Most growers will grow feminized seeds, and that takes a slightly different process when you're growing. I mean, that's the seeds I use. You use feminized seeds all the time, okay? Or do you grow regular sometimes?
I'm actually doing both right now. But yeah, I use feminized. I've actually made some feminized.
Nice.
The successful feminized ones I've done, I just bought a very small bottle of what they call seed feminizer. Basically, it's a spray that you spray on a female flower, and it causes it to grow male parts. And eventually that female flower will have pollen pods pop out and it will start spewing pollen everywhere. Actually, best to start doing this early on before the buds start. But anyway, all the pollen that's produced by a female plant will be female pollen. So when you put it on a female flower, you've got 100% female seeds. It's really not rocket science. You're tricking the female. You're pushing her into a state to carry on her genetics.
That's right. So you either use it. Sorry, Marge.
I was just saying that's so interesting. I had no idea that's how feminized seeds were made.
Oh, really?
I just thought they came in a package. I don't know. But, I had no idea it was that simple.
Chemical from in the plant. I think it's an ethylene gas that's produced by the plant, and when you spray this
sodium thiosulfate or colloidal silver,
or silver thiosulfate, it blocks the pores of the plant, so it can't find this ethylene, and so it thinks it's I'm supposed to produce pollen now. And so it just it produces it, and that's why you have to keep spraying consistently and all the way until you start getting pollen coming out the plant, because you got to keep those pores completely blocked.
And just if you do that, if you take a female plant and you spray it with either silver thiosulfate or colloidal silver, you can find it online. You spray it with this, and after a week or so, it will start growing male flowers out of it. Those male flowers have pollen in it, and the genetics from the male flowers, even though they're male flowers, the genetics creating the pollen is fully female. So that produces pollen with only female genetics. You add that to the female plant, and then the seeds that are created by that female plant only have female genetics. So it's very likely that it's going to be a female. And that's how that shit works.
Yeah.
But if you, because you're spraying the buds with shit though, don't use those buds afterwards for anything. You can't smoke it or make hash out of it because it's been sprayed with shit.
If you're only going to spray like one bud, you really kind of want to make sure when you're spraying and not to get any drift on those other buds of smoke or anything like that. The silver compounds are not healthy to smoke.
Yeah. And this is the same principle with autos as well. You can do that with a photo period plant. You can do it with auto flowers, but it's better to get regular autos, so you can just have a male auto and a female auto and put them together, because you're on time limit. You don't have the time to spray it and let male flowers form out the flowers and shit. You just want to get that done normally. But you can do it if you want to. There is time. But
when I did my autos, the autos I did, basically I created the pollen on one grow, and on the next grow I used that pollen on the next plant up to so technically that's not a self-pollination. That is more of an F1 kind of situation, but close enough, one of those deals like that. But that's what I would, if you're going to make the feminized auto flowers, it's easier to do it that way, is to create your pollen and then come back on the next plant and use the pollen, because like Becky says, they're so fast and you can't stop them.
But making female seeds is very easy to do. You just need the right stuff. It's recommended if you want to make some seeds. That's what I prefer. That's what the majority of growers prefer, because they don't want to waste time and space growing a male plant. And if you just grow a female, it's nice and easy. And this can be done as well with like cuttings. If you take 2 cuttings and you grow them so they're both female, they're both growing the female flowers, and then you can just spray one of those until it produces the male flower. And you can sprinkle this all over, when the pollen's created, you can sprinkle that all over the plant, over the top buds, side buds, everywhere. But like Monkey said, you can also just sprinkle that pollen on one bud, and a piece of pollen gets on one of the pistils, the white pistils, that tells the plant that it's been pollinated there, and it makes a seed there. And that's pretty much, so if you just pollinate one bud, you're only going to get seeds in that one bud. A couple of pieces of pollen might stray and get onto buds elsewhere, but just sprinkle it on one and you should be fine.
Now, I want to mention that if you're making seeds, if it's your first attempt at making seeds, be careful, because if you're trying to pollinate your whole plant, you're looking at a lot of seeds here. So when I'm talking about pollinating just one bud, you can get 200 seeds off of just one small bottom bud. It's not uncommon. So be very careful when you're thinking about how many seeds do you really need and what are you going to do here. So that's why I find it helpful to use like one of those smaller bottom buds to make my seeds, and then I can smoke everything on top after that.
This is also where hybrids come from. Say if you collect all this pollen off a white widow, and then you sprinkle it on a few buds of different plants, different strains, like a blue cheese, a Jack Herer, these different strains, the CBD creamy cheese. Let's just go for what I like, right? And you have lemon tree, you got those 4 plants, and you got pollen from a white widow. You sprinkle in all of those, they're all going to be different. All the seeds are going to be different hybrids. So super cool, man. I've never done this myself, and I'd really like to. What I would like to do is I'd like to make seeds of the lemon tree that I've been smoking and get a collection of those together. That would be super cool. So
you can do like I'm doing now. I mean, my last my grow, I took the strawberry cough. I've got 2 cuts on it, and I'm planning on reversing one in micro and then sprinkling on the other one in micro once I've got the pollen going. But you can just take 2 cuts off your plant. You don't have to don't have to use the original grow even, and just grow them out in micro, grow them in half gallon pots, 1 gallon pots, keep them small. Do your thing, and you're going to end up with feminized seeds off that. They'll be effectively S1s coming back if you're trying to save the genetics.
It's crazy shit, man. It's in the amount of seeds you get from one of these plants, thousands. And if you got a decent sized plant, it's just going to be a ridiculous amount of seeds, man.
I'm just reading this question from Blazing Stars.
Right.
I'm assuming you mean, does it just, if you're going to use colloidal silver, does that mean it's going to produce more Hermy traits?
Yeah, it's a common one. It's what people think that you're making the female plant hermaphrodite, and that's not what you're doing when you feminize seeds. You're making a female plant grow male flowers. When a hermaphrodite plant happens, the genetics of the plant change, so it becomes a hermaphrodite. The genetics inside the seed, it's always there, but because of certain stresses and environmental pressures,
the epigenetics kick in, and it causes a secondary trait to come out.
Right? And that's when it herms. It's not the same as feminizing. Feminizing is different, because when you're using the colloidal silver, that will cover the pores, and like Monkey said, the ethylene won't be picked up by the plant, and that makes it turn into a male plant.
And it just thinks
Grow
like, wow,
male
I'm a
flowers.
boy, so I'm going to do this. Just pretty much that way, as opposed to the secondary trait. And there is some theory behind saying that when you trigger that secondary trait, that secondary Hermy trait can be passed on in a stronger force on the next plant. It's not proven one way or the other, but I know a lot of people believe that if you grow the seeds of a Hermy, that it will also Hermy. I've grown some Hermy seeds. They were fine. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just they're just less. They can't handle stress as easy. They'll Hermy easier if they come from a hermaphrodite plant. But when you use feminized seeds from a good breeder, then the seeds are bred for a while and checked for a while, put under different stresses to see how easy they Hermy. And they're bred out for a while before they actually send them out to people. Usually, especially if it's a good breeder.
Asking if there's a difference in genes. So if you're reversing a plant and you're making it produce the male flowers, no, it's not going to be different. It's going to be the same genes, because that plant has it's only got its own gene mapping. It can't. You're not introducing different genes, if you get what I mean. You're just forcing that plant to create male flowers rather than letting it herm, and then because if you let it go. And a lot of them will do that. The longer you let them go, there is that chance that they're going to turn on themselves and then do the same thing. That's a little bit different, but it does get a similar result. I can see how you'd probably get more herms in that side of it. But I mean, every time I've done it, as far as using colloidal silver, they've been pretty much exact copies.
Pretty stable stuff usually.
Well, what do you think, Marge? Have you ever got any questions here so far? Have you heard anything which you'd like us to go into more detail?
I was looking at actually South Silly's comment, the glory hole method, which I kind of like that idea, because it sounds like it's sort of what Monkey was talking about. Just
I
doing
never thought about that.
Yeah, it seems like it makes a lot of sense. If you don't want to, pollinate too much of your plant, then it's a good way to keep that from happening. Because I've never worked with it on purpose, like I said, but it seems like it could be pretty easy to accidentally pollinate too much. And then, like you said, you have like so many seeds, because they really do make a lot of seeds.
Breeder Steve, in one of the Breeder Steve interviews, maybe with the first one we did with him, if you just search the catalog for Breeder Steve, you'll find the interview that we did with him. And he explains how he started off with just pollinated a few bottom buds on his plant, and he was shocked at the amount of seeds that came from those. But I like that glory hole method. It's a good idea.
Yeah, it seems like a really good idea. Because when my plant got accidentally pollinated last summer, like the number of seeds I got was unreal. There's so many.
You ever tried growing any out?
Have I?
Yeah, did you save the seeds? Did you try growing any?
I haven't yet. I did save a bunch, though. I couldn't save them all. There was just so many of them. It was ridiculous. But I did save a ton.
There's a pretty good chance that this could probably be half hemp. There's really no way of telling.
That's right. You don't really know, do you? Especially when hemp's grown around, because that can get in there too. It's really easy to cross-pollinate and get shit fucked up. So if you are going to try pollinating one of the females and you don't want it to go all over the plant, be very careful. Turn the fans off. That glory hole method is a good one. I think that would be a good way. Try and seclude one specific branch.
Now we jumped right into the feminized seeds and stuff like that, but I mean, I have to say that if you want to just try your hand at making seeds, the easiest by far way of doing it is start with regs. Find a good male. It's so much easier because it's going to make the pollen for you. But again, you'll have reg seeds at the end that you're going to have to learn how to tell the right sex and cull out the bad ones and those kind of things. But it certainly is easy enough to do and very, very, very possible. Growing regs is not that difficult. It's just not as, how am I going to say it, not as lazy of a thing to do. You have to kind of pay a little bit more attention in the beginning.
I say, well, if you find something good, say if you got a cutting, but a mother plant, like last week we explained, you got your mother plant, you're taking cuts from it, and you want to make seeds with this because you have to take everything down and move house or something, then, it's like putting in a hard drive. You just make yourself some seeds. It would take a while. It's not like it's done instantly. But, make yourself some seeds with their genetics and you can save them for a very long time, man. 10 years or something at least.
Yeah.
It's a good way
Yeah,
to
if not
keep your
more.
strains going.
Just depends how you look after them and how you store your seeds.
And then if you've got multiple males as well, then you can pollinate, like we said, pollinate just one bud, one branch. Then if you got different males with different pollen, then you can put that on the same plant and just do different branches. Just label them so you know what pollen has gone on to what branch, so you know what you get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Chilbert was doing some of that, wasn't he? He was using different. Recently, I thought I saw. Well, his last one, he was doing a couple of different strains and
Yeah,
a couple of different fathers and that.
I think he had one father and he was using different mothers on it. He was using mimosas and
That's right. Yeah.
mimosa orange punch, and I think the male was Queen's black lime pie. If I'm not mistaken.
It's really easy to make seeds, man. It's just something. It's so easy. People do it accidentally all the time.
Yeah, yes, they do.
So I recommend, if you have space for it, then give it a shot, man. Just make yourself some seeds, and then you can go and plant them outside at the start of summertime if you don't want to grow them in your grow room, or you can actually try these things out. Depending on how long you've been over at Percy's and things like that, maybe people would want to try them out, and you'll be able to see how they grow around the place. Like TG does. TG sends his seeds out to loads of people, and he gets to see the variety those seeds make, which is very cool.
Yeah. Edison's asking, if you're making feminized seeds from two different cuts, does it matter which is the donor and which is the receiver?
I wouldn't think so, Edison. No.
I think I'm going to have to kind of go with you there, Mackie. I wouldn't think so, because just
they're exactly the same, aren't they?
Depends. I mean, this is where biology comes into it. I suppose there's going to be some dominance across the two, but whether that's a visible dominance or a noticeable difference between the two, that's kind of, if it's a cutting from the same plant, no difference. It's going to be the same genes, so it's going to follow this. But if you're using, let's say you pop two seeds, they're two separate phenos, you might get one being more dominant in that cross than the other. But if you've got a mother plant, you take some clones from it, they're going to be exactly the same. And that's the beauty of having a mother plant taking clones. You know it's going to be exactly the same because it's the same genetics.
Yeah, I would say it's going to depend how stable those two cuts that you're taking your feminized seeds from. If they're really stable cuts, if they've been worked way out there and they're going to be very consistent, then you probably wouldn't make any difference. But if they're not work lines, and there's a good bit of diversity in those phenos there, it would probably be a little bit different. You never know.
He's extended on the question, though. I thought you meant from like a cutting, you had two different, which were the same strain. But if it was, say, Zittles and Gorilla Glue number 4,
right?
Which way would which one would you make male and which one would you keep as female?
Again, it's going to depend upon how stable the Zittles cuts you have are and how stable the GG4 cuts you have are.
Yeah.
If those are really stable and work lines, it probably wouldn't make much difference between, because they both are going to produce the same genetics no matter what you do. But if they're just unstable mishmashes of something that somebody put together, they're going to be all over the place.
You can also
genetics are the big deal when you're growing weed.
You can take a female plant and revert it back like to male, fully male, not just a female plant growing male flowers, and then you can see what male traits those genetics express. You can do that as well, but that's it's more complex to do that. We're trying to keep things simple, just make it easy for you guys to make seeds.
If you're gonna try this, don't try and be the fancy seed breeder the first time. Keep it simple, see what you can do. You're gonna have some fun and you're probably gonna grow some good weed, but don't overcomplicate it. Again, we're all about keeping it simple, guys.
There's a lot more that goes into breeding than simply just throwing pollen on something. And I mean, if you're doing it at home and you want to keep it simple, essentially that's what it is. But a lot of these crossbreeds and hybrids and things that are out now that you're seeing, and those lines have been stabilized over generation and generation and generation. They work those lines to get them to a point where they're stable, they're happy, they produce pretty well the same across the seeds, and then they'll cross that with something else that they've stabilized. So as Monkey mentioned, if you're going to be doing a Zittles and and a Gorilla Glue, and you're going to be mixing them back and forth, you're most likely going to have a pretty well 50-50 mix. They're not, pardon me, it's not going to go one way heavier than the other. I wouldn't think. But again, I'm not a world-class breeder or anything. So, there could be slight differences between them.
So once you've gone out there, you got your male pollen, like from a regular male or a feminized plant, a female plant that you've made male flowers grow on. You take the pollen and you add it to your plant. You can do it with a brush. You can just pour it on. It depends on which way you want to do it, but just add it. But bear in mind, whatever pollen gets into the air will land on some buds and create seeds on other buds. So if you want to be cautious and not pollinate everything, then try and isolate a single branch at a time. And just brush it on with like a makeup brush or something, just a fine little brush, just to brush some pollen onto the pistils, and the plant will do the rest of the work.
Make sure your fans are off and have been off for a while.
Yeah.
With grow lights on, it's really neat to touch the brush onto that plant and you see these literal little particles of pollen drifting off of your bud going like, oh crap.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Every one of those little particles can be a seed if it hits another bud.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a good reminder, because it seems like it's one of those things that seems pretty obvious, but is, you get working and then you forget. So turn the fans off.
Yeah, turn the fans off and be very, very gentle with your brush. It doesn't take a lot of force. Barely tap it.
And then it's going to take a few weeks for the seeds to actually grow. The plant will spend some energy. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks, maybe, for the seeds to be fully formed. But it's better to just let them push as long as possible, as long as the flowering period is, and just they'll be happy just sitting in the bud growing. They're happy in there. When they are like really done, they'll start pushing themselves out of the bud and start falling onto the medium. So if you see that happening, then you're going to harvest that particular bud and take the seeds out of it. Whichever seeds they are, male, for regulars, the feminized, autos.
Mm-hmm.
And you can
give me them auto fems.
Yeah, that'd be sweet, man. Making auto fems would be so cool.
That's what I'm going to have a play around with. I've just got to get through this run and get myself stocked so that I don't have to run over summer this year, because it was just nightmare fuel this year or last year running through summer. So I'm just trying to keep the heat down. So this year I'm probably going to do a little bit of breeding with some autos and see what I can and can't do with them, just for the fun of it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do some lemon tree for the fun of it as well. I'm going to take some cuttings and self some, like one of those male. So it's the same shit, as close as genetically possible to what the original was. But,
right. And when you're spreading pollen, South Silly is reminding us, have a spray bottle of water with a fine mist ready to go, because that's how you stop pollen dead in its tracks. You wet it. Pollen becomes completely inert once it's wet. So if you make a mistake or you're trying to stop a pollen cloud or something like that, water's the way to go.
And doing this out of a decent sized plant, you'll get a couple of thousand seeds. It's ridiculous the amount of seeds that these plants produce. It's like OP, unnecessary. So you don't need that much, but they can last for a long time. You just store them right, in a cool, dark place, low moisture, low humidity, and they'll be good for years and years. And you can give them to friends. You can go out and grow them as gorilla grows. You can use them in your own grow tent and grow them. You can pass them out to people on Percy's and shit like that.
Sprinkle them over the lawns at Government House.
I was just thinking something similar. It made me think of Dana Larson, because he had a program in Canada for a bit before legalization where he would send out, if you requested it, send out seed packs of, I think it was like hemp seeds, but he was encouraging people to plant them in like the flower beds at the local cop shop or the city hall or whatever the case might be. So
yeah, why not?
Oh, why not? Exactly. Yeah, and people did it. So that's great.
But if I had enough and I wasn't bothered what I did with them, I'd be rolling around and just put them in the little garden beds out the front of Government House there, and just come past every now and then and check on them.
Right. You wonder if the local gardeners would be like, hey, what's this? Maybe we should just leave it alone.
Like Mackey's ideas, go up to the little flea market and slide a few on the table next to the tomatoes out there in the spring, and let little grandma find out, where important is this over here?
Yeah,
Why
next
isn't it
minute
growing
some
any
grandma-
tomatoes yet, officer?
Exactly.
Yeah. 12-foot sativa in the backyard.
But one thing to add before we move on to the questions as well is that you should do this early on in the flowering process. The seeds are going to take about 6 weeks to fully form and be ready for harvest. So you can't start at week 8. You want to get this done early as possible.
Yeah, I'd go week 2 or 3
Mhm.
early on like that, and it'll give them plenty of time to mature and be ready.
Yeah, that's a good point on autos. If you're doing this with autos, you may not have enough time to pollinate that auto with the same pollen that you just pulled off that plant. So you usually give yourself about 4 to 5 weeks, have another plant running if you're going to do that, so that it's sort of just starting to build its bud sites when you're pulling pollen off the other one.
Yeah.
That way it'll give you time to let that plant make seeds. So just
Do
a
it,
point,
man.
because autos are quick.
And not only do it, but head over to percysgrowroom.com, sign up and document it so we can see you make these seeds as well. That'd be super cool, man. We like seeing things like that. We all enjoy this hobby. We all enjoy what everybody does here, growing plants, doing their own things. So come and share it with the community on percysgrowroom.com. Head over there, sign up, do it. Do it now.
Edison said, make little soil seed balls and throw them as you walk. I saw a guy the other day and he had one of those, the table sugar shaker things.
Yeah, they're the pepper
And
things.
it was full of seeds, and he's just skating down the sidewalk. And as he's skating, he's just leaned off the side and he's just dusting the place with seeds. I thought that's perfect. I like that idea.
Yeah, man. People do that in the UK, but it's only wildflower they use. They don't use the cannabis seed, obviously, because seeds are fucking expensive.
Yeah. Unless you make them yourself.
If you make them yourself, then it's pennies.
Right.
And remember, that is a good point, actually, because buying seeds, anybody here who's ever had to buy seeds, they're fucking expensive. It's not cheap to buy them. So,
and sometimes it's not easy to get them shipped to you as well.
Yeah.
Unless you go to Ali Bongo.
Yeah.
15% off.
15% off too. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Especially getting, top shelf genetics. That's a big thing. A lot of the illegal countries can't get it. I've been hunting those slurricanes for a while, and it's going to cost me $200 US just to get those ones from deeply rooted genetics. And to be fair, they look absolutely phenomenal, and I can't wait to get my hands on them. But 200 US is roughly 350 odd Oz. So it's a lot of cash to drop on 10 seeds. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You may have to keep those genetics for a while, if you know what I mean.
Chilbert said here as well, which is important. When reversing a cut to self, that's when you self-pollinate a plant with itself, pretty much. Like you 2 cuttings, and then you're making 1 turn. Grow male flowers and then pollinate the female. When you're doing that, then Chilbert says start the donor into flower a couple of weeks ahead of the receiver. So the plant you're going to turn into male, start that off a couple of weeks sooner, because you have to self that as well. That's a good input there. Cheers, Chilbert. It's good info. Then you have the pollen ready for when the female flowers are starting to form and shit. You're not wasting too much time.
And don't forget, you can store it. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and I haven't heard it recently, but the bro science out there that says you can't smoke bud with seeds in it is completely bullshit.
You
can definitely smoke. Yeah, you can. You got to pick the seeds out, but you can definitely smoke that bud.
Hey, 20 years ago, I was smoking plenty of bud with seeds in it. Don't you?
Damn right. That's all you could get.
We probably all were, for being honest, right?
Pop.
Yeah. Used to be a fun game. You'd if you were the one packing the bowl, you'd stitch your mate up by popping a seed in it. So halfway through it'd pop and blow the bowl out on him.
Oh, I had so much upholstery in cars got burned when it popped out the bowl and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, man. So that's it. Make seeds. Do it. I haven't done it yet, but it's something that I've always wanted to. But having the space and the time to get it done, it has not been easy for me. But that'll be coming soon, I think. I have plenty of weed, and I can get this shit fired up soon. And just do a small tent, 60 centimeter tent, and do a little breeding project. That would be very fun, I think.
Yeah, we always talking about micro grows, and I think micro seed making for a home grower, you could still get a few hundred seeds off of a micro plant. So
I never even thought about that. How interesting.
Yeah. I was thinking about that, doing little micros, get your micro going and pull your pollen off one and then have another one running so you can,
Yeah.
pollinate that. And then you've got a couple
Huh.
hundred seeds right there. It doesn't have to be a 3/4 pound plant. You
Right.
can, you can
Mhm.
use it as a micro, and it's going to go. It'll happen quicker too, I suppose. That's the other side of that. You're going to get through that process a bit quicker if it's going into flower quicker.
Nice.
Yep.
So give it a shot, man. Make some fucking seeds. Do it. Regulars,
Mm.
feminizers, all the same. Do it. Do it. We do have some questions which we should get to as well. I got one from Shonuff, which is a little bit complex for me, I think. So, how many generations should a line be taken before it's considered a well worked and consistent?
That's a rough one there. I mean, I've seen genetics out there at F7s, which are just considered to be like amazingly worked plants. I've seen people consider F4s to be very stable work lines. Because I'm not an expert, I'm not going to give you an answer there. I just, I've heard different stories by different breeders. I'm impressed if somebody offers me an F4, honestly, because those are even hard to find these days.
Yeah. I think it can range anywhere from 3 to 5 to 7. It really comes down to the strain and its original stability as well. Because you got to take into account the stability of those genes at the start. If they're unstable or shaky at best when you start, then you're probably in for a longer ride than something that you've taken that's already been stabilized to a point, and then you're taking it from there. So.
And when we say stabilized as well, we mean like it's not going to hermit, it's going to share the same traits as it does to its sister seed. They're as similar as possible, because sometimes you'll get seeds from the same bag, same breed, same breeder. It's all come from the same seed bank, all the same. But then you'll pop 2 plants, but they'll be completely different from each other. One's super tall, one's super short, one's bushy, one's not. And that means that they're unstable. If they're stable, then both of the plants produced from those 2 seeds will look about the same.
Almost clone-like, yes. Those are really good work lines. Different breeders, different ways. Wouldn't you guys say? I mean, some of them, you never know what you're going to get as far as phenos go, and other breeders, almost perfect, identical plants every time. Just all depends.
And you will get the occasional offshoot, but they'll be pretty similar most of the time.
As Edison said, if 8 out of the 10 are the same, or similar enough, and they're exhibiting the same traits, then you'd probably consider that fairly stable.
And when we say Edison, we don't mean Thomas Edison. He didn't do this. We mean Edison in the chat here, all right?
Yes,
we are not misquoting Thomas Edison. Okay.
I just didn't want to pronounce Sproglino. I just thought that it might be a bit, and my Australian accent emphasis on the sprog, unfortunately. So I'm sorry about that. You get it. Yeah, Matthew got it, of course.
Yeah, man.
Oh dear.
So I think a good example of a stabilized line would be DJ Short's Blueberry. It's been worked really good, and if you get some of the you can actually get that line really worked out there and really stabilized now. And when it's grown, the plants just almost look identical. It's a beautiful line now, and that's why you see a lot of crosses with Blueberry, because it's such a stable line. When you cross with it, its results are very consistent.
And that's a good point from Backblast as well. Environmental conditions do matter. If you're running a really hot room, you may find it's going to drag some of those sativa growth traits out of a hybrid more so than vice versa. If you're trying to pull some more of the indica trait out, it's probably going to show more in a colder environment, in a more stable, lower temp environment than those higher temps. So that would matter. Whether that matters as far as it when you then self that and try and making seeds from that, I don't know. Again, I haven't dived into that as much. But I have had that where I've had a warmer environment and a cooler environment, and I've had 2 vastly different plants. So
He also
Matters.
asks, when crossing a regular plant to an autoflower plant, not straight ruderalis, how likely is the offspring to be autoflower? It's another complex question there, sure enough, bro. What do you expect us to do here, man? We're crossing a regular plant with an autoflower. I don't know, mate. I would assume it's around 50%. It will carry that ruderalis gene with it, but that might be completely wrong as well. I'm not sure. Just assume 50%, half from one plant and half from the other. So I say bud pressure says 25%. So
Yeah, so that's like you'd say a quarter of the genes being that, unless you're using a just straight ruderalis, even then I suppose it brings that down. I wouldn't think completely 50-50. You could, wild guess, 50-50, but I would assume there would be some that wouldn't and some that don't. And this is the point in stabilizing lines, is that you get to that point where you can pretty well guarantee that they're going to be auto. But again, I've had autos that, where I've bought them and they've gone, auto on the packet. Other
And
people
they're
have grown them, autos. And then I'm, 7 weeks in and not a bud sight to be seen. So I've had to turn the lights back to trigger it. So, it is possible that it happens. And again, that can be environmental factors that cause that. So,
we have one more question from Filmy Bowls. I think this was sent by email. Here's a few questions. We've got a couple of questions in this. Is there a way just to pollinate just one branch on a plant? And if there is, what's the procedure? And we spoke about that briefly in the grow guide.
Glory hole, would be perfect.
Just try and isolate the single branch you want to pollinate, make sure there's no wind blowing around, and use a brush or your finger to drop the pollen onto the actual bud. Touch the bud, put it on the bud with a brush or your fingertip with no air blowing around and shit. And then you should be okay after that. You give it a shake, make sure any spare pollen is left so it doesn't go back into the tent. You turn your fans on and then it gets kicked up off the flower. You'll be careful of that too. But isolating the branch and pollinating it directly is probably the best way to go there.
Yeah, and Sal Silly's recommendation or suggestion, I should say, of letting that branch stick out of your tent, zipping your tent up so it's isolated from the rest of your tent makes perfect sense. That way you can isolate just that one branch. So give it a shot.
Very nice. And then one more question: when germinating seed, what's the ideal length of the tap root? Should you what should you see before you place it in the grow medium? So how long should the tap root be before you put it in the medium? See, I don't do that. I'll go straight into the medium nowadays. So don't mess around with the paper towel thing. It's one extra step that can cause damage, and it's just I find it to be a waste of the time most of the time. So mine goes straight into the medium anyway.
I like to see half an inch.
Right.
About half an inch. If I'm getting about that, that's about right. I know when I put that in the medium, within 2 to 3 days, it's coming straight out. But because I'm running a lot of autos recently, I don't want to be putting them into the medium because I running I saw turkey bag, running cocoa. I drop straight in, autos straight into a 5 gal, straight into the cocoa and go from there. So I want to know that it's at least that tap root's at least nice and healthy, and then it's going in and goes from there. So, but I know plenty of people, as you said, Mackie, yourself as well, that just pop it straight in the medium and let it run. And that's, that's how that works in nature. So why wouldn't it work now?
I soak and go straight to the media after that. These days, I have done paper towel sometimes. I guess it just depends upon what mood I'm in for the grow, whether I want to do paper towel or straight into the media.
Right. I can't be asked with this. I'm just putting it straight in the medium, or I'm going to be really meticulous with this. I'm going to paper towel it.
I mean, last time I was just meticulous on preparing the seed bed, but after that, I'm thinking well, everything's here. So why do I need to do anything with the paper towel? So I don't know. Different. Just try it.
The Husky's talking about plant count there briefly, and it's I think plant count is bullshit. It doesn't really matter. Floor space is more important. That's going to decide on how much cannabis you produce. You could have 100 plants, or you could have 2 plants. If they're in a meter tent, they're going to produce a certain amount of cannabis. And if you want to breed and look for phenotypes and all these different things, then you're going to want a lot of plants, man. And you're not looking at bringing all of those to flower and produce cannabis at the end of it. So plant counts are just bullshit, man. Don't try and get involved with all that shit. Don't restrict yourself, man. Just enjoy your hobby as much as you need to.
If you're where I am, you're fucked either way. It doesn't matter if it's 1, 10, 12.
Yeah.
It's all
That's
zero.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if you can show, if that ever does happen, then if you can show that you're using it for breeding purposes, it's not going to be the same, is it?
Yeah, there's some people in legal areas that have limits like 4 plants that have just taken it to the extreme and literally grow outdoor trees just to say, F you government, look what I'm doing, So, but I mean, they're doing it legally. They're within the rules, but yeah, I don't think counting limits they don't matter.
Yeah.
Well, when Canberra legalized down here, there was a guy got in trouble. He had 4 plants. There was 2 people in the house, and the plant count legally is 2 per person, up to 4 per household. And one of his neighbors called and dobbed him in because he had these things on his back deck, and they were easy 6 foot tall, 5 foot wide monsters. And the cops came in and they took the plants off him, and they said, look, we understand, but within reason. And he's like, I can't control what the plant's doing. Like if I put a seed in the dirt, next minute that's what grew out of it, because there's only 2 plants. And they're like, yeah, but limits are 150 grams wet. And he's like, well, and that's going to be well more than 150 gram wet. I still don't understand that. I don't understand how they got to 150 grams wet.
Well, wait a minute.
Bullshit laws all the time, man. It's the way it is, isn't it?
I'm kind of thinking about what the high ladies were talking about in Canada, the deal about you can't transport X number of wet grams of cannabis at a time, bullshit like that, but it's not considered wet cannabis till it's cut. So the answer is there. You only cut 150 grams at a time, and you make sure you either use it or move it around or give it to somebody else or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
It's absolutely ridiculous. The rules are.
It is. You got to play the game.
I've had autos go 5 times that amount. So. And that's not bragging. It's just, it is what it is. That's what you can't.
I fully understand what you're talking about. I mean, 150 grams wet. I mean, come on, you get more than that dry. 150 wet is going to be about that.
About that, yeah. Well, that's about right.
Something in that zone, about 38-ish, 40-ish, I think, is where I would go with that number, but that can change. But yet, I would consider that being not a great yield.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's everything, right? I think we have covered everything here today. We've got all the questions done. We've got the growth guides done and all that shit. Is there anything else we can add? So there we go, everybody. That was how to make your own cannabis seeds. If you need any help or have any questions at all, just like the rest of the grow guides, head over to percysgrowroom.com, sign up, become a member. It's all free and it's the most friendly community you'll find on the internet. So head over there, become part of the community. We'd love to have you over there. Ask any questions you like. We'll be able to help. And that doesn't apply for just this episode. That's all the episodes we've done in the past as well. If you need any help at all, just head over to Percy's and we'll be able to help you out over there. Of course, it would be awesome if you could share this episode with somebody. You share it on social media if you can, share it with a friend in real life if you can. That is the best way to help us help the show grow. Just find more people. The algorithms don't share us very much because we're cannabis related, so we need people like you to help us grow by sharing the episode on social networks. That would be sweet. But for now, it's Friday, so the weekend is coming. Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay high, stay safe, and we'll see you on Sunday for the live show on YouTube, which is youtube.com/high-on-homegrown. Hope to see you there on Sunday. But have a good weekend, everybody. Stay high. See you in a bit.